Yeah, hi, this is Pat C. again on Saturday, the 15th of June, 2024. And I'm just doing a follow-up to events that occurred this past week when I was in the High Court before Ms. Justice Stack and the debate that went on regarding the Ministers and Secretaries Act, that it was invalid, and that was affecting both the Courts of Justice Act 1924 and the Documentary Evidence Act. And it also affects the Court Officers Act 1926. But Ms. Justice Stack was, we basically were having a legal argument for over an hour. And she kind of jumped ship when I put her in the position of having to concede that the Succession Act 1965 was not validly brought into force because the statutory instrument to commence it was itself defective because there was no power for the then Minister for Justice in 1965 to bring the act into operation under this. Now, since then, since I wrote the book, and the book contains all the evidence which I put before her, and also the notice which I sent to the court services. All these are basically in Chapter 7 and Chapter 8. Okay. So I advised her of all of that. But she then tried to jump ship and say that it didn't matter that the Courts of Justice Act 1924 was not commenced, or the Ministers and Secretaries Act, because she still had power pursuant to the Courts Establishment and Constitution Act 1961, which means the courts were validly commenced in Section 1 and Section 2, specifically for her. She said she had original jurisdiction, which was mentioned in the Court Supplemental Provisions Act 1961. Well, I let her carry on, and I realized she didn't know the law. The fact of the matter is that both the Courts Establishment and Constitution Act 1961 and the Court Supplemental Provisions Act 1961, which the first one establishes the new courts. The second one would give power, jurisdiction to the judges. People, that act is not validly commenced or enforced because of this statutory instrument here, which I'm going to move this forward towards the camera so everyone can have a good look. This statutory instrument here was signed by Sean Lamass on the 29th of September 1961 as the minister. He was as the Taoiseach, but he's also what could be considered the successor to Liam Cosgrave. And Liam Cosgrave didn't commence the Ministers and Secretaries Act here with a valid commencement order. I spoke about this on the last day. There's no seal on that. So that means the so-called new courts in 1961 are not established. That then means also that there's no power under the Court Supplemental Provisions Act, in other words, what's known as in legal terms VERIES, which is power for judges to hear cases. They have no power under Section 8. Therefore, Ms. Justice Stack needs to go back and review her interpretation of law. At the end of the hearing, I tried to say to her, look, I want to clarify some mistakes here. She immediately cut me off, and that was the end of the hearing, and made an order contrary to not allowing me to present my full case. So that my opponents have received this order. But In fact, the court was not established and existing since the new court since the 29th of September 1961. Therefore, Miss Justice Stack was sitting in a court that it doesn't exist. And secondly, she has no power because the jurisdiction under Section 8 of the Court Supplemental Provisions Act was not commenced and enforced again because there's no power under the Ministers and Secretaries Act, which has never been validly commenced, fixed with the seal. Now, as well as that, I want to let people know, and I'm going to show this again and stop this video. I don't want it too long. The same problem is in the Court of Appeal Act 2014. It was commenced by a statutory instrument by Minister for Justice Francis Fitzgerald. You can see it here, and there it is on the 2nd of September 2014. This has the same infirmity because Francis Fitzgerald had no power under the Ministers and Secretaries Act, which would be in, I think it's section 16 or 15, or sections 1, 2, and the other sections within the Ministers and Secretaries Act. Quite simply, that act is not in force. Okay? Now, since then, I've sent a constructive legal notice to the Minister for Justice. You can see it here, the parties that are named in relation to the fact of that they can't be charging court fees, that it's illegal. Now, I also sent to the Taoiseach this notice of objection. Here, let me put it on here. Notice of objection, right, in relation to these acts that they've never been validly commenced and enforced. Now, I've sent that to Simon Harris and there we are, go, Rossa Fanning, Helen McEntee, Donald O'Donnell, Angela Denning, for all the members of the court. And there's the content of the objection there. Let me get the second page. And the third page, and you can stop the camera or you can stop the video at each one of these to get a shot. Okay.